Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this free online PyMOL webinar of CQ Beratung Bildung. My name is Nassim Masri. I'm the course manager of the Applied Bioinformatics and Biostatistics Further Training, which is also offered by CQ Beratung Bildung. Dr. Christoph Knorr will be your lecturer today. He is an expert in the field of protein visualization and PyMOL. He has a PhD in biochemistry and he has a lot of expertise as a teacher, as a lecturer. He has been teaching in the applied bioinformatics and biostatistics further training since more than 3 years. I'm happy to hand over now to Christoph, and I wish you enjoy your free webinar with Christoph.
Thank you, Nassim, and I also welcome all of you to this free webinar in regards to our future courses with the topic of PyMOL. For this webinar, I prepared a small presentation in which I want to talk about different aspects of PyMOL. We will start with a small introduction into PyMOL. So what is PyMOL? Why can working with PyMOL be useful, helpful for your research or for your work in general? Then we will see how we can look at structures in PyMOL, how you can adjust, how the look of these structures can be adjusted, how images can be saved, and I will show you how to generate a simple small video with PyMOL. At the end, we will take a look into selections, so working with parts of our structures, before we end with a small outlook in regards to our newly planned courses here with PyMOL. So what is PyMOL? PyMOL is one of the most common tools to look at protein structures and is an open source but proprietary molecular visualization system that was originally created by Warren Leifold Delano. Originally, it was commercialized by Delano Scientific LLC, a private company created by Warren Delano, dedicated to creating useful tools that become universally accessible to scientific and educational communities. Nowadays, it's commercialized by Schrödinger Inc. However, Schrödinger still offers trial versions and free versions for educational purposes. As soon as you want to use images or videos for publications, posters, and so on and so forth, you need to buy a license, however. PyMOL is able to produce high quality 3D images of small molecules and also biological macromolecules such as proteins or nucleic acids. According to the original author, by 2009, almost a quarter of all published images of 3D protein structures in the scientific literature were made using PyMOL. It's one of the few mostly open source tools available for use in structural biology, and it was originally written in Python and therefore can still be used to run Python scripts, for example, for measurements or more complex calculations. PyMOL was originally developed to look at three-dimensional structures or parts of them and change how they are shown, how they are colored, and these kind of things. Over the course of time, more and more editing functions as well as measurement functions were included in PyMOL, making it a very complex and mighty program nowadays. This is especially true when it's used in combination with Python or its own PyMOL script, so making use of the own PyMOL language. Why can PyMOL help you in your research or in your work in general? Well, visualizing biological macromolecules helps us to understand the overall three-dimensional structure of them. It allows to analyze interactions between different molecules, can help in analyzing how ligands bind to proteins, and thus it can be used for detecting essential amino acids, for binding processes, and the overall three-dimensional structure of proteins. PyMOL is able to measure important distances, angles, and dihedrals in structures. It is able to introduce mutations into macromolecules and thus analyzing how these mutations influence the overall structure. It can superpose structures to help analyzing differences and similarities between them, and it can even build small molecules for binding analysis and things like this. Therefore, PyMOL can be used or can help in drug development, in mutational studies, structure comparisons, and visualizing interactions, so in many different fields of structural biochemistry. Now let's take a look at the PyMOL program itself and how we can look at structures. Once you opened PyMOL and you loaded some structures into a so-called PyMOL session, this is how PyMOL looks like. The central part is this big black window, the so-called PyMOL viewer, in which the different structures are present in your current session are shown. On the right side, there is a so-called structure sidebar. This showing all the different structures that are present in the current section, and for each structure is assigned with 5 so-called object buttons. These object buttons allow users to do different things with the corresponding object, the corresponding structure. The first one under the letter A is the so-called action menu, allowing for superposing, zooming, centering of structures, as well as calculating neighbors, molecular weight, and things like this. Under S is the so-called show menu, allowing users to activate or switch between different representations for the corresponding object. Under H is the hide menu, so the third one. This menu allows users to deactivate different representations of the corresponding object. Under L is the label menu, allowing users to add labels to their structure, for example, to highlight specific amino acids. The last menu is under C is the color menu, allowing users to switch between different coloring schemes depending on their needs. At the bottom of PyMOL, there is the PyMOL command line, or which allows users to type in commands which are then executed by PyMOL. For example, when creating selections, this is where the corresponding command needs to be typed in, and then we have the PyMOL output, PyMOL shell, which will show the corresponding output, the answer of PyMOL to the corresponding command. At the top, is the top menu with different submenus like the file menu, which allows users to open files, but it also allows for exporting of images, movies, structures. So if the user wants to export only a part of an object, he can do so as well. And it also allows users to download structures directly from the RCSB PDB, since PyMOL is directly linked to this database. Furthermore, there are menus like Build for building small molecules, Movie for creating movies. Under Display, users can change different settings in regards to how things are displayed. And under Wizard, There are different wizards, for example, a measurement wizard to measure things, or a mutagenesis wizard, which allows users to introduce mutations into macromolecules. Users can control the camera with the help of their mouse. By holding down the left mouse button and moving the mouse to the right and to the left, users can rotate the camera accordingly. In a similar manner, by moving the mouse up and down, users can rotate the camera in this direction as well. By holding down the right mouse button, users can zoom in and out of a structure of their choice. Moving the mouse up, zooms out, moving the mouse down, zooms in. Last but not least, the camera in itself can be moved by holding down the middle mouse button or the mouse wheel, and now the camera moves without rotating around the object in question. In this session, I opened several different structures which can be activated or deactivated by clicking on their name. So when a name is grayed out, a structure is deactivated. Means the structure in itself is hidden but still present in the session. So users can switch between different structures as they see fit, depending on their needs. Each structure opened in PyMOL is shown in this default representation visible here. Like this. The protein in itself is shown in a so-called cartoon representation, where helices are represented by helices and beta strands are represented by arrows. Inorganic ligands, like metal ions or sulfate ions here in this case, are shown as in a sphere representation, where each atom is shown as a opaque sphere with the corresponding van der Waals radius. Organic ligands are shown in a stick representation, where these different sticks represent the covalent bonds, and at the end of the sticks, the corresponding atoms are placed, and these ligands are colored by element. Nitrogen atoms are shown in dark blue, oxygen atoms in red, sulfur atoms would be colored in yellow. Last but not least, the oxygen atoms of water molecules are shown as small asterisks surrounding the molecule, showing the corresponding solvent around the outer structure here in this case. PyMOL allows users to adjust the look of their structures to fit their needs, and this is done with the help of so-called representations. These representations determine how an object is shown in PyMOL and thus also later in the corresponding images. The most commonly used representations are shown here on the right side, with lines, spheres, mesh, ribbon, cartoon, sticks, dots, and the surface representation. All of these representations are available in the Show menu in the structure sidebar, available in the PyMOL session. A stick representation, as already mentioned, displays covalent bonds in form of sticks, and the corresponding atoms are then at the end of these sticks. In a sphere representation, atoms are shown as opaque spheres, and they have the corresponding van der Waals radius to show the overlap between the different atoms in a structure. A lines representation is very similar to a sticks representation. The main difference is that the covalent bonds and the corresponding atoms are shown as small lines instead of with three-dimensional sticks. The dots representation, on the other hand, is a see-through version of the spheres representation, allowing to generate a see-through surface, you could say. Then there is the surface representation, for which PyMOL calculates the surface surrounding the corresponding macromolecule and then shows it to the users. Furthermore, there is the cartoon representation, probably the most commonly used representation for protein structures, with helices as helices, beta strands as arrows. Last but not least, there is the mesh representation, a see-through surface representation, and the ribbon representation, the oldest way of visualizing different protein structures accordingly. As mentioned, users can switch between different representations with the help of the show menu. And this show menu has two subsections. The main menu, which allows users to activate different representations, and the show as menu that allows users to switch between different representations. Currently, we see the standard chain representation. However, users can now say show as sticks and switch to a stick representation for this object. In the same manner, users can say show as spheres, and a spheres representation will be shown. Like this, users can now pick any of the different representations they are interested in. This, for example, would be a mesh representation of the current object. As long as the users use show as, PyMOL simply switches between different representations. However, with the general show menu, users can also activate multiple representations at once. Currently, we see a mesh representation by saying show cartoon. I can now activate a cartoon representation in addition to this mesh representation, allowing me to have two representations active at the same time. And I could even say show sticks and add the sticks representation to here as well. So the show menu allows simply for activating different representations. The hide menu, on the other hand, allows users to deactivate specific representations. For example, hide mesh, and now only the cartoon and sticks representation are visible. In addition to hiding a singular representation, the hide menu also allows to allows for hiding all representation at once. So with hide everything, all representations for the corresponding object are hidden. And now with show cartoon, for example, we can reactivate just a singular representation. This switch between different representations is not only doable for a singular structure, but also for all structures at once, for all objects at once. In the structure sidebar, there's an additional entry called all, and the show menu there, show as mesh, for example, allows users to apply the corresponding representation to all molecules, to all structures in the current session, allowing for an easy way of adjusting the look of multiple structures at once. Aside of adjusting the changing between different representations, PyMOL also allows for different colorings. Users can color whole structures in one singular color. Here, as the whole structure is colored in a singular green, for example. However, users can also color by chain so that different macromolecules of one and the same structure are assigned different colors. Here, one in green and one in blue. There's also the option to color by secondary structure element. Now helices are colored in red, beta strands in yellow, and turns and unstructured regions are colored in green. Last but not least, there is the color by spectrum option, which allows users to color the structures in form of a gradient, starting at dark blue at the N terminus until a dark red on the C terminus, and the color goes from red over green and yellow to from blue over green to yellow to red here at the end of the day. All these colors can be can be chosen in the color menu of the corresponding object. Here I have the structure 7110 currently colored in a singular color. Also, all macromolecules are colored in green. Now, with color by chain, I can color each and every I can color each macromolecule with a different color. So we have now one macromolecule in green, another one in light blue, one in pink, one in white, one in salmon, and a very small one here at the bottom in yellow. So each macromolecule is assigned its own color. Users can also color by secondary structure. And there are three predefined color combinations. The most common one is to color helices in red, beta strands in yellow, loops and unstructured regions here in green. Last but not least, the color by spectrum method allows users to color the corresponding object in form of this gradient. The N terminus starts at dark blue, and then we go from blue to green, yellow, orange to dark red at the C terminus. However, this gradient is applied over the whole object, so the whole structure, here over all of the different macromolecules present in our structure. If users want to apply this gradient to a singular macromolecule, then users would need to create a selection first and then apply this gradient to the corresponding selection object that was created. When users apply such a coloring like this color by spectrum, for example, all atoms of the corresponding structure are colored accordingly. And now, when users switch to a whole green coloring, so a mono coloring, again, all atoms are colored accordingly. Oftentimes, especially when working with the sticks, spheres, lines, or dots representation, it is better to have this color by element we saw earlier, where different types of atoms are colored accordingly. When users have such a monocolor structure, they can activate the color by element option via the color menu and use the very first option. Now, this color by element is applied again. Nitrogen atoms are shown in dark blue, oxygen atoms in red, sulfur atoms are colored in yellow, and the carbon atoms stuck to their original color. Here, for example, they have this all green color throughout. If I now say color by chain, for on the other hand, now carbon atoms are colored accordingly to to which depending on which macromolecule they belong to, while the other atoms, so nitrogen, oxygen, and sulfur, keep their colors to make it easier to differentiate between them accordingly. Once users are done with setting the corresponding representations, with coloring, and so on and so forth, oftentimes users want to create an image. Before creating an image, users should render the corresponding image simply to get an image of higher quality. PyMOL offers two ways of rendering the image: the draw option or the ray option. Draw is faster, and however, um, it has a lesser quality, and draw doesn't allow for a transparent background. Instead, it will use the background you can see in your session, so currently with black background. Ray is slower, produces images of higher quality, and allows for a transparent background. However, depending on the size of the structure and the amount of atoms present in your session, Ray can take a long time and lots of resources. So all the user always needs to weigh here between draw and Ray. When using draw, the image is rendered in a quick manner, and once this is done, the user can directly say save image to file and save the image under a name of their choice on the hard drive, for example here, with the current date and then draw. And now PyMOL saves the image on your hard drive, and you can look at it at a later time or can use it in for other things. You can also say Ray. Now you have this rendered image with and now again you can save it on your hard drive under save image to file. And what already is visible is this alpha checker that indicates in a see-through background, so a transparent background. And when we now look at the corresponding images, let's look at the draw image first. For draw, the structure is shown, the whole image is shown, but this black background is still there. On the other hand, the image created with Ray contains no background, has a better contrast, and thus is qualitative higher or is qualitatively higher here at the end of the day. So users can create high quality images in a relative simple and straightforward manner. In a similar vein, users can create videos in a simple manner using the graphic user interface of PyMOL. Here we have the structure FreeFQK, again from the RCSB PDB, and now I want to create a small video where this structure rotates around the y-axis. Yeah, where the structure rotates around the y-axis. For this, users can use the legacy movie maker at the top of PyMOL. And the first thing users need to do is they need to reset this movie maker to make sure no old images, no old movies are still in the memory. Now, for such a simple movie, the movie maker offers different programs. And under camera loop, there are programs for X roll, X rock, Y rock, and Y roll. Rock refers to the protein moving from left to right and right to left without making a whole rotation. Roll, on the other hand, refers to rotating around the corresponding axis, so either around the x-axis or the y-axis here. Now, users can pick y or x roll and can determine how many seconds the movie should take. The available options are 4, 8, 16, and 32 seconds, respectively. For our purposes, we pick X roll 4 seconds, which is more than enough here for our purposes. Once the program was selected, a movie panel appears at the bottom of the PyMOL viewer, where the user has access to a scroll bar, allowing the user to see the different images that will be part of the corresponding movie. To see the movie itself, users have to use the command mplay, and then the corresponding movie starts. And now we see the protein rotating around the x-axis here in 4 seconds. Furthermore, the movie goes on without stopping. So it's on a loop here. To stop the corresponding this loop, as users need to use mstop afterwards. The nice thing about the legacy movie maker is that it allows users to add other programs afterwards as well. For example, the Y roll again with 4 seconds. And now the whole movie is 8 seconds long. The first 4 seconds are the X roll, and then followed by the Y roll. And again, the whole movie is on a loop, so it goes on until the user uses the command mstop. And like this, simple movies can be generated with the help of the graphic user interface of PyMOL. For more complex videos, either PyMOL scripts or typing all the commands in the PyMOL command line are necessary. For example, users can create videos of the superposing of multiple structures or movies where the structures change their representations, and so on and so forth, depending on the needs of the user. There's no limit to these movies as long as the user can think of it. The last thing I want to discuss here in regards to PyMOL are the different selections that PyMOL users can create. Selections are smaller objects that contain only atoms that fulfill certain criteria. So PyMOL goes through the corresponding structure and copies the coordinates of atoms that fulfill the corresponding criteria, and then creates a new object containing these copied coordinates. Therefore, selections can be used to look at only parts of a structure. For example, at a specific macromolecule or at a specific ligand, and so on and so forth. Selections can be based on many different things, different macromolecules, specific types of amino acids or bases, specific atoms, ligands, and so on and so forth. The general syntax for creating a selection is as follows. Select in all lowercase space, then the name of the selection of the object the user wants to create. This name is completely up to the user. and then comma, criterion, and the value for the corresponding criterion. So in the very first example, select chain A, comma, space chain space A. Chain A, so written together, is the name of the object that will be created. Chain in all lowercase is the criterion, and A is the corresponding value. So here all atoms that are part of this macromolecule with the chain identifier A will be selected. Users can combine different criteria using logical operators, for example, and, or. PyMOL has different types of criteria available. And the first category are the so-called identifiers, where users can pick different modules, different models, different macromolecules, amino acids by their residue number or residue identifier, amino acids or bases by their residue name, so the amino acid name, the base name. Structures can be selected by atom name, or items can be selected via atom name, and for proteins, even certain peptides can be picked by using the criterion PEPSEC and then using an amino acid sequence in one letter code to create a selection of this specific sequence. There are also the so-called property selectors, where users can pick atoms according to different chemical properties. These are the formal charge, the B factor, and occupancy of an atom. For proteins, there's the option to pick atoms only of specific secondary structures, for example, only helices. And there's also the alum criterion, which allows users to pick atoms of a specific chemical element, for example, C for carbon. Last but not least, there are different chemical classes like organic and inorganic, allowing users to pick non-polymeric compounds. Accordingly, solvent would allow users to pick only water molecules. Polymer protein, polymer point nucleic allows users to pick only atoms in protein structures or only atoms in nucleic acid structures. Hydrogens allow users to pick only hydrogen atoms. Backbone and sidechain allow users to pick either atoms in the polymer backbone or in polymer non-backbone atoms respectively. Metals allows users to pick only metal atoms or metal ions, and donors and acceptors allow users to pick hydrogen bond donor atoms and hydrogen bond acceptor atoms throughout the different structures. A selection can be created as follows. For this, the user needs to use the PyMOL command line and write select in all lowercase, then a name of their choice, for example, chain A, and then comma, space, criterion, in my case, chain, and value A. Once the selection was created and the syntax was correct, the PyMOL terminal, the PyMOL shell, will give feedback. Selector selection chain A defined with 2458 atoms, meaning the selection object was created successfully and it contains 2458 atoms in total. Furthermore, the selection, all atoms that are part of the selection that was created are shown in form of these small pink squares. And now the user can create other selections as well. Select this, resin this, for example, to pick only atoms in cysteines, or when if the user is interested in aromatic interactions, then something like this is also doable by using his plus phi plus tur plus trp, sorry, plus trp. Now all atoms in one of these four amino acids were picked or selected, so histidine, phenylalanine, tyrosine, and tryptophan. And like this, the user can now look at only parts of the corresponding structure. The nice thing about these selections is that they allow us to visualize only small parts of our structure. For this, the user needs to hide the structure in itself, so hide everything, and then activate a representation of his or her choice for the corresponding selection. For example, this lines representation for the different cysteine amino acids in this structure, or show sticks for aromatic, and now we have a stick representation where we see only these different aromatic amino acids. And like this, the user can now lazy focus on a singular part of the corresponding structure. I created some other selections earlier. For example, this selection where only atoms in alpha helices were picked, or this selection ligands, which shows only the organic ligands, these two thymidine molecules that were part of this structure. Similarly, I created a selection that contained only the high oxygen atoms of water molecules in this structure, here now shown in form of these red spheres. And depending on our needs, the user can now look at only parts of the corresponding structure. There is there's another feature that is pretty nice in regards to these selections. The user can, for example, create a selection of a singular ligand molecule, here with thymidine A, and then the user is able to create a selection that shows only the amino acid that surround this molecule in form of a stick, and this is what we see here. And when we now color the thymidine molecule in green, we see which amino acids are in close proximity to this ligand, and now users could analyze how this ligand is bound by the corresponding protein, which interactions are there, without having the remaining structure here around to hinder the measurements or to show things that aren't really necessary. So these selections can be very useful in for many different aspects depending on what users want to achieve at the end of the day. Now, as a small outlook, what is planned with our future courses. Currently, our PyMOL course is separated into two different modules. A basic module that is mainly self-learning and that starts at the 1st of October this year. In this module, participants will get an introduction into working with PyMOL. They will learn how they can use scripts to achieve their different goals. They will learn how to measure things like distances, angles, dihedrals, and neighbors. They will learn about creating selections and creating images. And at the end of this first module, they need to create a complex video that showcases all of the different things they learned throughout this first module. The second module then focuses on mutational studies and thus starts with an introduction into intramolecular interactions in proteins. What kind of interactions are there? What kind of distances and parameters are important to see whether this is really such an interaction or not. Participants will learn how to analyze these interactions with the help of PyMOL. They will learn how to introduce mutations into protein structures in PyMOL, and they will learn how to analyze the effect of these mutations on intramolecular interactions with real life examples. Furthermore, participants have the opportunity to get help with their own research by presenting their own research, their own studies, their own questions at the end of the day here. This was all from me. Thank you for your attention, and I'm more than ready to answer any questions you might have in regards to anything I presented to you here or in regards to the different modules we prepared for the future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Christoph, for this great webinar. I hope everybody enjoyed it. So if you are interested now in booking these online courses, please take a look to our website. So there are two online courses, the Module 1 and Module 2. If you have now questions about this webinar or about the future courses, please ask. You will get directly answers from Christoph. And I hope now you enjoy your evening and see you hopefully soon in the courses. Bye bye.